Good afternoon, everyone. This is Wade Fox. This is another edition of Second Opinion. I want to welcome you to a couple really great editions of this over the next couple weeks, where we've invited some very exciting candidates in to come to visit with us. Today we're going to start off with a local candidate, Miss Kathy Lynch. Kathy is joining us this morning to talk about her candidacy. Kathy, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Wade.
Kathy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your office that you're running for and kind of what region it is, because we always have different state, Senate, and House overlaps. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
So I'm running for state representative for the 2nd Middlesex District, Westford, Littleton, and 3 precincts in Chelmsford, 5, 7, and 8.
Okay. And you've been covering the region for a while, but tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, about your career background and so forth. I know that you were not born and raised here, right?
Correct. I'll tell you a little bit about that. I was born in New York. I grew up in New York. My parents were parents of 5 children, and I was the youngest. It was on Long Island in a suburb, not too dissimilar from Westford. And my father was a high school principal, and before that, a history teacher and coach. He was very good with people, a wonderful father. And my mother was a great mom, and that's what she did. That was her job. She had 5 children, and she looked over us. Very different times back then. Bigger families, a lot of moms were home, and we felt safe in the neighborhoods and all that. But it was just a great little childhood on Long Island. And then my dad decided to retire at 55. Back then they retired earlier. And he decided to go to Virginia. And I decided to go to college there. He waited for me to finish high school, then he went to retire. And then I went to college in Virginia for 2 years. And I thought I would like a small school, but I really preferred a larger school. I had 2 siblings living in Maryland at the time, and so I said, maybe I can go to University of Maryland. So I applied there, got in, and I finished my undergraduate degree there, studying advertising design. Then I went back years later and studied psychology, so I got another bachelor's degree. I started using that advertising design career, going into publishing and marketing, advertising, that kind of work. And one of the biggest first jobs I had was working for the United States Department of Defense, state-of-the-art equipment, one of the first PCs. You remember when PCs weren't even popular? I was there right when the first one came in, a little Macintosh like that. And then very quickly it expanded, and we'd have big computers. I'd have 2 screens, and I'd be working on some really fancy material. It was a great start to my career. And then after a number of years working for the government, I transferred to private industry, working for Medical Education Development Services. And that was a wonderful nursing education consulting company. And then, let's see, where did I go from there? I went to Johns Hopkins University, worked at the Applied Physics Lab, and worked on more government contract work with the Department of Defense. And one of my last staff positions was with Research for Better Teaching. That's in Acton, and it was a K through 12 educational consulting company. And I learned a lot about teaching. And not only did I come from a family of educators, I had 2 siblings that were teachers. I have aunts and uncles that worked as teachers, and my dad was a principal. But I got to see firsthand on the inside what a good teacher needs and what a good administrator needs, because it was a training professional organization. So that was my last work. Then I decided, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll try something different. So I went back and studied nutrition at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Fascinating information about nutrition, because I was very kind of confused about what was healthy to eat and what wasn't. And because I had 2 children while I was working at Research for Better Teaching, I thought maybe I could make sure I'm going to be here a while for my parents. Not for my parents, for my kids, because I was an older parent, you know, and I just wanted to be there and watch them get married and have kids and so forth. So nutrition became very important. it's kind of one of those obvious things where if you eat well and you exercise, you're going to live a longer life, right? So I studied that.
So you've got an eclectic background.
Oh yeah, yeah. We got the health in there, and we have all sorts of stuff going on.
Well, since you mentioned it, you've got kids in the Westford system?
Yes, yes, the public schools.
Okay, great.
I have, my daughter is a senior this year, and my son is a freshman.
Okay, great.
Now my son is going to Neshoba Valley Tech, which is very interesting and wonderful, state-of-the-art place to go to school. I'm just very impressed with that school. And then my daughter is going to Westford Academy in a dual enrollment program where she's taking courses at Middlesex Community College so she can get some college under her belt before she graduates from high school.
Okay, well that's good, because one of the things I wanted to talk about is your literature, which I've reviewed, talks about what I consider the 3 pillars of your campaign. And I'd like for you to talk about each one of them, but it's quality education, healthy communities, and basically a very strong local business base that is going to help pay for some of the things that we need to pay for. So let's take it one at a time. Tell me a little about what your thoughts are on quality education.
So education is really important when you have children, right? You want the best for them. They need to be prepared for the future of work. And I think it's very important that whatever they learn in school can be applied to their future so they can support their family and have a profession that they enjoy, they get some enjoyment out of. And so we need to prepare our children for the 21st century world of work. What we don't want is to have them come out of school and then look at a job, and the job that they're looking at is hiring people from other countries. We want them to be prepared here where they can work and support their families. The other thing that's really important is that as a legislator, we need to bring the funds back from our tax dollars back into the community. It's called local aid. And that way we have enough money to do what we need to do in our school system to give them the education they need. It's called Chapter 70 funding. And so the taxpayer will pay taxes every year, and then it goes to the state. A lot of people don't realize that it goes to the state, not to the community, unless the legislator goes and advocates and brings it back to the community. And I took a look at the numbers, and I saw that here in Westford and this district, Littleton and Chelmsford, we are under what the state average is by a couple of $1,000s. And so we're not getting our fair share compared to the rest of the state. Now, I also looked at the difference between Westford, Chelmsford, and Littleton, and I saw that Westford was getting more money than Littleton and Chelmsford was getting the least amount of money. And when I go knocking doors, I talk to people, and the people in Westford feel like they're doing okay, but then I go to Littleton and Chelmsford, and they feel like they're getting the short end of the stick. And I was able to confirm that, by the numbers. It's all online. You can take a look at it. So anyway, we need to get enough funding for our schools. Interestingly, too, is that there's something called the foundation formula. And everyone across the state is using outdated information from 1994. So we really need to do an overhaul and make sure that the communities that need the funding are getting it and that it's equitable according to each district. So that's really important. I also noticed with my children in the public schools that it's unfortunate to say this, but that there are some political agendas being pushed in the public school, and I don't believe it has a place there. What public schools need to be is a place for fair and balanced debate. Teachers should not be pushing their political agenda on the students. They shouldn't be proselytizing either. So what they need to do is just present all the information from both sides so that children can make their own decisions. And sometimes I don't feel like they're getting that fair information.
Thank you, Kathy. One of the questions that has risen, of course, is the local aid issue, which you brought up. We in Westford passed an override already. If we rebalance this, okay, are you saying that most of that we're probably already rebalancing ourselves inside Westford because we're kind of self-funding it. Because we send money out, we don't get it back, but we still don't seem to turn anything down. We have overrides to help pay for stuff that the state funding will not pay for. In this case, do you think the people in Littleton and Chelmsford probably are more at a disadvantage because of the data being off since 1994?
I think we're all a little bit underfunded, and I think that if the legislator would go back and say, you know, we need this, I don't want to go to the taxpayer again and ask for more funding, we would be better off. So I think that's just one thing that I can improve upon, and just making sure that our district gets the funding it needs. It's unfortunate that we had to go back to the taxpayer again, and I've spoken to lots of people about this, and I spoke at town meeting as well. It's not always easy getting up at the mic, especially when it's not, you know, it's a controversial topic, but this district that we live in, there are people who have been here for like 40 or so years, and they want to stay here. And what they're seeing, a lot of these people are on fixed income, and they're seeing that their tax rate is going up, 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 and the property taxes. And so they can't afford to stay here anymore. And you'll see a lot of for sale signs pop up. Additionally, at the other end, where you're having families just starting out, they can't afford to come in here either. So we're having this community of people who come in for the schools and then they leave. And it's starting to be very transitional. A lot of people just come in and out, in and out. And I don't know if we all want that in Westford. I think we want people that have lived here and grown up here to be able to stay here, you know?
Okay.
So we need to take a look at that.
So we'll go from that to your second, which I found really interesting, healthier communities.
Healthier communities.
Try to define that for me. How do we get healthier?
Well, healthier communities is something I could bring in from my nutrition and health background. What we need are more preventative measures, because we have 40% of the state budget going to Medicaid, for example. I mean, that's almost half of the public are on government health care. And we can lower those numbers if people took a little bit more responsibility and watched closer what they were eating. If we could improve the quality of the food out there, that would be wonderful. And if we can just get people eating better and exercising more. You know, I think about the communities that we live in, and I think we need sidewalks. There's not a lot of places to walk safely. And I think about my children trying to travel from this place to that place on a bicycle, and I'm terrified because the roads are just very curvy and it's dangerous. There's not a lot of room. There's no sidewalks. We had someone just hit the other day by a car, and they were jogging. I mean, this shouldn't happen. So if there's anything I can do to kind of bring better transportation within our district, I would be happy to do that. That's one way to keep our, you know, our culture here healthier, and then keep our costs down, because if we work on prevention, we're going to all be better off. We also have an opioid crisis that a lot of people are talking about, and we need to work. I mean, the legislator needs to go on and help support programs that talk about the training and education about how we can reduce the opioid abuse. We need to have law enforcement be able to stop it from coming in. We need to make sure that people are coming in legally and not bringing in drugs over the border. We need training, education, enforcement, all those things we can do to improve the opioid situation.
Okay.
So those are a couple of things we can work on.
The last part of this one is support of small local businesses. And I know that you've got several things about that, but one of the things I'd like to address is the fact of it kind of ties in with the safety, but you know, we've had big businesses come in to Westford. We've given incentives to get people to come in, and as we build along 110, and now as we build along 40, and so forth, we're moving out of the traditional Westford, somewhat rural, to I'm not going to say quite urban, but let's say it's a connected suburb. And as you do that, you get a lot more traffic and so forth, and you get the big businesses coming in. My question is, when you talk about, and because we give them, let's say, real incentives to come, the local business guy doesn't really quite get that incentive to start a small restaurant or a small shop or something like that. So when you talk about supporting your local small business, tell me a little bit about what you mean by that.
Well, you know, I had a couple of small businesses. One, I used my graphic design as a small business, and number two, I was a health coach for a number of years. And so I know what it's like to start a business. For people starting out, especially as a sole proprietor, there's a lot to the business itself, right? You have to do the business itself, and then you have the marketing, and you have the taxes, and you have to do all the business aside from just the work itself. It's very, very time consuming and very challenging. You've got taxes you have to pay, you have licenses, fees, regulations. There's a lot of obstacles in the way of a business. So starting out is really tough. And what I'd like to see is more training for people out there in starting their own business. And not only at that inception of the business, but along the way, so that they don't open their business and then close their business and fail. And that's very expensive for people. They start something up. You'll see franchises all the time. They get it launched, they put a lot of money into it, and then they fail. And it's a very sad situation. So we need to bring our businesses more local. We've got a lot of talent in this district, and a lot of people have skills that they can bring to this district, but they don't quite know how to make it into getting money coming from their talent and skill. So I remember going to high school, and they didn't talk much about business. Wouldn't it be nice if the high schools, and this comes to education, but would teach people how to start and run a business? Very, very crucial bit of information that I think is missing in the high schools. But to teach them how to do it, and to have someone like an office close by where they can go in and say, I'd like to start, like for instance, I had cooking classes, and that's something that a lot of moms who know how to cook can start a cooking class. But then they have to go through different boards and different things that make it harder to just launch. One of the programs I wanted to start was a ballroom dance program in town. And I was thinking, okay, great, wouldn't this be fun? We'll get all the high school kids together, because my daughter likes to ballroom dance, and we'll get them prepared for cotillion and the prom, and we could have it at this place. Maybe we can get an affordable rate to get this going. But then I looked, oh no, now I have to buy insurance. We got the liability. And then do I have to have some kind of a permit? And it just stopped me in my tracks. So my friend and I just said, this just isn't worth it. And we don't want that to happen. We want some good things happening within this district, and we want to make it easy. It's free market, free enterprise, ease of business.
Well, Kathy, do you think that, because it's going to lead me on to the next thing, is that given the challenges that you were just talking about, it sounds like we're not as business friendly as we could be for smaller businesses. We're somewhat very friendly to big companies that come in and promise you the world and so forth, and you know, they look big, they build beautiful big buildings, which increases certainly our image. But I think also is the fact that the services that have to be supplied to those big companies, like the new fire station, police, ambulance, and so forth, these are all downstream costs that sometimes don't get factored in. They get factored into the tax rate down the way, which people are paying for, but you may not be exactly a citizen that's, you know, recovering any benefit from having a big brand new building planted on 110. So I think that we have a mixture of being business friendly sometimes and not so business friendly. But in talking about that, which gets down to the thing that we all kind of are concerned about, is our taxes. We live in Massachusetts, and we've talked about state aid and what we're trying to do. You know, here in the Southern Middlesex District, you know, we've got people that are struggling in this local economy, even though it sounds like things are going well. You've talked about the people that are on the fixed income and so forth. What do you think a state representative can really do to fix that? And I think the idea is that We've had incumbents that have been in positions in the state for years and years and years, and they always say there's something that can be done, but it seems like the same problems come back year after year, and we don't talk about it till election time. So what do you think you could do that's different?
Well, one of the problems we have here, and this relates to business, is that say you want to buy a refrigerator or microwave or something like that, doesn't it behoove you to go to New Hampshire where there's no tax instead of buying it at your local store? The tax rate, sales tax rate is 6 1/4 right here, and you can get no tax when you go to New Hampshire. That hurts our businesses here. There's too many people not buying here, they're going to New Hampshire. So we need to lower the sales tax to 5%, and that's something that the legislators can work on. We have a state income tax of 5.1%. We could roll that back a little bit. 5% would be a nice round number, would be good. Taxes is what legislators discuss. They talk about where the money goes and how much they're going to get from the people who live in the district. So whatever we can do to make it favorable to support our local businesses would be a very good thing.
Okay. Do you see people moving that way in the district? I mean, do they understand the economics of the situation?
Well, let's take a look at what Governor Baker's trying to do. He always looks at the budget. He has the overall picture of it, and he'll have the legislators propose certain things, and a lot of it passes, and this is good. We keep our state running well and so forth. But there are some times, there's a number of items that he says, this is redundant. We don't really need to do this. We need to cut here. This is an excessive program. We don't have to work and fund that. And he'll veto certain proposals. And our legislature, the way it is now, there's 160 legislators. 35 of them are Republican, so that's a very small portion. But it's so slanted to spending. So that the legislator right now is very big into taxing, bringing in taxes, and then spending it. So when Governor Baker tries to reduce that, they override his veto. So when he does a veto, they override it. This is not good for us as taxpayers, because then we're paying more taxes for programs that may not even be necessary or are very redundant. So that's a real issue with our taxes. Governor Baker's very popular and among many people, and I think he needs more people there to support him, and we just need more balance in general at that legislature. It's just too slanted one way. The Speaker of the House is very powerful, and a lot of the legislators, including our current legislator, really just kind of rubber stamps whatever he says. There's another issue that the voters need to be aware of, and that is that a lot of the time the legislators don't get to see the bills before they even rubber stamp them. I mean, how can you vote on something you haven't seen? When I get in there, I want to make sure that we have at least 48 hours to look at these bills. It is just unfair to do otherwise. You can't have someone vote on something they're not familiar with.
Okay. Well, Kathy, we're kind of winding down here, and I thought maybe just we end up here with on a personal note. This is your first campaign for public office. Have you learned anything of really interest from your experiences in dealing with people and running a campaign? What are the things that stand out in your mind in this campaign?
Well, one thing I just want to say to you, Wade, because I know you've moved away, and we miss you here. But I want to thank you for being the chair of the Republican Town Committee, and I, as you know, I took the place after you. It's been a great experience to just see the whole way that the government and the whole process works. And as working through this campaign, it's really fascinating. It's very time-consuming. It's a kind of a labor of love to spend so much time trying to get to know the voters and see what the issues are. And I'm learning a lot through that process. So it's just a wonderful opportunity and experience to do that. Does that pretty much answer your question? Or?
Yes,
yeah.
that pretty much does it. And if people are interested, do you have a website they could go to? Or?
Yeah, I have a website. This is my push card, so when I knock on your door, and I'm trying to reach all the doors, but there's only so many places I could go. But I do have a website. It's votekathylynch.com. And we're always looking for volunteers to help. And we have an incumbent that's been in there a while, and he's got a little bit more in his pocket than I do. So, so we need that. But we're running a really good campaign, and I just hope that the voters are ready for some change. You know, someone new, someone that hasn't been in there for 10 years. Fresh perspective. We talked about a couple of different things. We talked about education and healthy communities and strong business. I think these are the things that our community needs, and I hope that the voters will vote for me this term.
Well, thank you, Kathy. I appreciate you coming on and opening up to all of us, and I wish you success in this campaign. And for myself and Kathy, I want to say thank you for listening. And as I always close out, if you ever have a question, don't forget to get a second opinion. Have a good day.